Well, I think that we are now live. Okay, so we are going to give just some time for the people to join us, so they have enough time. So we will give some time. If it's okay, Porek and John.
Yep.
Yep, please, Maria. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe we can start now. If it's okay for you, Porek and John, it's okay?
Yep.
We can start now the event. Okay, good. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our very first linking event about commercial retrofit in Ireland. I am Maria. I am a member of the marketing team here at Core Installation and Core Retrofit, and today I will be your host. But first, let me introduce you to our guest today. We have John Fingleton, architect and head of home performance in the certification at Irish Green Building Council. And John will talk about commercial retrofit and Ireland's climate action plan. And we also have Porek Kavanagh, operations manager at Core Retrofit. Porek will talk about the benefits of commercial retrofit, the success we have achieved at Core after implementing some energy-saving measures, and also about commercial grants available from SCEA, EI, and Core's contribution towards our climate goals here in Ireland. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in our live chat. But in case that you're watching this on the recorded version of this event, feel free to send us an email to hello@coresystem.com. You can see it there. So yeah, I think that I will hand over to John right now. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Maria. So thanks very much to Core for inviting myself and the Irish Green Building Council to speak today. So as Maria said, we're going to be talking about the Climate Action Plan, briefly just on ESG, CSR, and then commercial retrofit, and I suppose our view on what opportunities are out there. The Irish Green Building Council is an NGO. We have 220 members. Our aim is to transform the building and become the best in class in sustainable building practices. So we do work on a lot of innovative projects, which are funded by our members, the European Commission, SEAI, EPA, and other sources. So it's really with out of our members that allow us to do a lot of this work, along with, I suppose, applying for grants and different funding streams. So I suppose I would like to thank our members, and you can see there our platinum, gold, and silver, and just any, I suppose, apologies if there are some platinum or gold or silver members there that aren't included. We seem to be growing our membership base on a kind of a very good trajectory over the last 6 months, and we have to continually update this slide. So I suppose in terms of the Climate Action Plan, which Core asked me to discuss, Climate Action Plan was launched in 2019, and there's within the plan, there's 100 nations. So for today's presentation, I thought it was good to pick out, I suppose, the key actions that I see that relate to commercial retrofits. And I suppose I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of each of the actions, but just at a high level, just identifying what these actions are, keeping an eye on them, and I suppose the timelines and who's leading those. So the first, I suppose, there's three within the first couple of actions that I think are important in terms of micro generation. So action 30, 31 and 32 are all really looking at supporting micro generation, which I think is important for commercial retrofit. That yes, it's definitely important to be thinking about fabric first, but there is a lot of good roofs out there that I think are could be fitted with PV systems, or if there is, I suppose, a water load, a thermal PV system that could really optimize and at a relatively low cost provide renewables at source for businesses to install, and especially, I suppose, if there's going to be renovation works of roofs where our facades where there's going to already be scaffolding installed, it can be a cost-effective project that can definitely reduce carbon emissions for a business. So I definitely think it's worth keeping an eye on the introduction of feed-in tariffs at a microgen scale. At the moment, it's only really larger scale schemes that can get the micro generation. So really, they need to introduce feed-in tariffs for smaller scale commercial projects. So I suppose that's section 30, 31, 32 of the Climate Action Plan. The next one I think that would be very interesting is Action 46, to examine the feasibility for commercial rates to be linked to a BER. So this is Department of Housing are going to lead this, and it's just one that I think could, I don't see it being introduced in the short term, but I do think it could lead to a good, more of an understanding of or an incentive for rates to be linked to BERs. And I suppose tax incentives, I suppose we want to make sure that we're not penalizing certain buildings that it might be more expensive to improve their building in terms of a listed building that's in a good location, that you have to, I suppose, look beyond the BER in terms of the environmental impacts of buildings, but also that I think it's examining the feasibility is something they've set out in the Climate Action Plan and could lead to some reduction again in CO2. Action 49, grants, so develop grants, new finance models and new delivery systems. So this is all looking at retrofitting buildings and just looking at the grant scheme. So again, that's has to be delivered under the Climate Action Plan. So I think CORE have been discussing that in different conversations this week. But again, it's clear in the Climate Action Plan that this is an element that needs to be reviewed. In terms of regulations, this is where I suppose I'd have some concerns about the Climate Action Plan. Action 55, all buildings undergoing a major renovation up to B2 are cost optimal, which is fairly well established in domestic buildings, but in commercial buildings there isn't that B2 or cost optimal. It's not as straightforward. So there really needs to be more guidance on that. And then action 56, all new buildings to be NZEB. So this shouldn't really be down as an action in the climate action plan. This is a building regulation requirement for all buildings. All new buildings have to be built to the 2019 Part L requirements, which are the NZEB requirements. And then Action 57, review NZEB and major renovation performance requirements. So that's going to be reviewed on every 5 years in the climate action plan. So I suppose there is a bit of they probably won't be reviewed then until 2024 for residential, but we might be due in 2023. You can see there for non-residential. So hopefully we'll have I suppose an improvement in the requirements for Part L requirements for new commercial buildings by 2023. Action 63 of the Climate Action Plan discusses the split incentive. So this is where you've got a tenant and a landlord. The cost of the upgrade falls on the landlord, the commercial retrofit, the energy, I suppose the energy renovation falls on the landlord, which is a big capital cost. The benefit is to the tenant in terms of reduced energy consumption, improved indoor air quality. I suppose reduced absenteeism as well is one of the benefits that you get from commercial energy renovation. So how do you address that split incentive where the capital cost falls on the landlord but all the, I suppose, the payback is achieved by the tenant? Are tenants going to pay more for a building that has a higher energy efficiency rating? And then Action 68, energy performance contracting. So the idea that companies like Core have an offering where they will go in and improve the energy performance of a building, and they will get payment. They will get payment over a period of time, and it works for companies to go in and do that, provide that service. So you're reducing the upfront capital cost to building owners, and the payback is the payment then goes to the EPC company providing that service. So I suppose they're the key kind of items in the energy in the climate action plan that really relate to commercial buildings. So in terms of it's quite high level targets and not really identifying, I suppose, key elements that they really want to tackle. So it's, I suppose there is an argument that it's quite vague in the detail that the actions are talking about. So then there was Interim Climate Actions 2021 was released, and there is also a plan to release a Climate Action Plan 2021. So the original Climate Action Plan was 2019. They've released Interim Climate Actions 2021, and they are saying that they're also going to release a Climate Action Plan 2021, and from then on we're going to be introducing a Climate Action Plan each year. So I was one worry I'd have with introducing annual climate action plans, like from we can see on the left hand side, I've kind of highlighted, I just have taken action 31, which is to deliver pilot solar PV microgeneration this is from the Climate Action 2019. And then when you look at the interim Climate Actions 2021, Action 40 is develop an enabling framework for microgen. So the actions in the 2019 aren't really aligning with the interim action. So I suppose my worry would be that when actions aren't deliverable, or they see there's a bit of difficulty, they just kind of it just gets lost between all these different climate action plans. So hopefully there is a bit more when the 2021 climate action plan comes out, it aligns with the 2019, or at least the interim climate actions 2021, and we are seeing a progress and following through with actions that you can't just have an action one year and just ignore it the next year because it was somewhat difficult to achieve. And it's very hard for us then as the Irish Green Building Council to see what the plan is if the plans to tackle climate action are just changing or kind of deliberately kind of vague between the actions, or not deliberately, but I suppose that it should follow through. So then I suppose to finish up in the Climate Action Plan, we have also got the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Bill, which was released this year. So this is the Climate Action Plan is, I suppose, the plans to be put in place, whereas this bill, the 2021 bill, it makes it regulatory and statutory to have national climate objective. So I suppose that's within this bill, it states that there is a climate action plan updated annually, and there is certain requirements within this bill. Where the statutory requirement is to get to the by 2050 a transition to a climate resilient, biodiversity rich, environmental sustainable and climate neutral economy, and this is the statutory setting for that. And then actions for each sector will be detailed in Climate Action Plan, updated annually. So from this year, we're going to have Climate Action Plan 2021 with 180 or 200 actions, and hopefully then each year there'll be reporting on those actions and following through with those actions. And I suppose back to the microgen, the 2021 interim was saying that by Q4 2021 the microgen would be in place, and it's very unlikely that the microgen feed-in tariff is going to be in place in the next month or two. So it just needs to be realistic actions, and they need to be deliverable. So just then I was also asked to discuss corporate social responsibility, which is being also discussed as environmental social governance. So the two of them really, I'd see there's very much an alignment where our ESG is definitely, I suppose, becoming more discussed in the past 6 or 7 months, and is replacing corporate social responsibility as the element that is discussed. So I just had looked through the Irish Times recently, looking at doing a search on environmental social governance. So one of the searches that came up yesterday was about food price inflation, and one of the comments within it then was 30% of SMEs are putting environmental, social and governance factors high on their agendas. So this is definitely something that people are aware of. And another report was with Goldman Sachs. They've got 5 billion of private equity, and their line was they're going to be investing in areas such as healthcare, balance sheet repair, and environmental, social, and governance. So this is coming from Reuters. It's got its tag of environmental, social, and governance, but it's not something that you invest in, or that you imagine that an equity asset float is going to be investing in. I suppose there's a worry that when I see it being thrown around like this, that it doesn't actually look at what actually is environmental, social, and governance, and the fact that you might be investing in it. I'd be slightly worried about it. So thankfully, when it comes to corporate social responsibility, there is corporate sustainability reporting, and there is, I suppose, EU legislation coming in that will. There's a proposal for a corporate sustainability reporting directive. So at least this will put some format on it. I suppose just with ESG, it's self-reported, and with corporate social responsibility, there's no definition of what you need to be looking at for corporate social responsibility, and you might it just could again. I suppose there's a risk of greenwashing, whereas I suppose when the EU get involved and they have reporting standards, it might put a bit of, I suppose, structure on what is actually required for reporting on your corporate sustainability. So I do think once I suppose there's just from a European level, it can definitely make things far more robust, and I suppose there will be directives as well on what needs to be included within that reporting. And finally, just in terms of commercial retrofit, I suppose there was November 2015, there was an extensive survey of the existing building stock, and this was by SEAI. And I suppose in terms of the key point that I felt were very important, in around half of the retail and restaurant building survey, the windows are single glazed. This suggests that there remains significant potential for energy savings through double and triple glazing. And so there is fabric upgrades that could very quickly kind of improve the fabric of buildings if single glazing is predominantly, if it is out there. I suppose there's conservation issues with a lot of commercial buildings in town centres with historic fabrics that you don't want to be just replacing without, I suppose, to the conservation and architectural heritage. But I suppose where I would see a good point there is 10 and centralized time controls for heating were relatively common, being present in nearly half of the buildings surveyed, which wouldn't strike me as being very, very, like, nearly half of them. That's half of them without centralized controls. As in contrast, room by room time and temperature controls were much less common, being present respectively in only 9% and 15% of surveyed buildings. So there's definitely an opportunity there to improve the controlling of heating and cooling within buildings, that especially when we're now at the stage where we're going to have a in office space anyway, there's going to be a mix of hybrid working from spaces, that you could end up having a lot of heating systems coming on, with basic coming on Monday to Friday for 9 hours a day, when actually there's only going to be people in the office 2 hours a day or 2 days a week, or there could be people there 5 days a week in certain rooms, and boardrooms don't need to be maybe heated as often as, or they don't need to be heated at all until somebody actually calls it up to be heated. So I do controls, again, will reduce energy bills and reduce, I suppose, ultimately carbon emissions. So I think that was just a very quick overview of the topics that I was asked to talk to today. I hope you find that interesting. And I think there is another presentation by Porrick now.
Thank you, John. Yes, and thank you so much for your speech. It was really, really nice, and it was really interesting. Thank you so much. So now I will have the pleasure to hand over to Porrick, who is the Operations Director at Core Installation and Core Retrofit. Thanks, Porrick.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about commercial retrofit. So my name is Porrick Kavanagh. I'm Operations Director with Core Installation and Core Retrofit. I've been with the company almost 4 years. Just a little bit of brief on my history. I'm qualified mechanical engineer. I have over 20 years experience, I suppose, in high-speed automation, installing equipment and processes in large plants, both medical device, pharmaceutical, and now I'm in the manufacturing industry of insulation. So just the two businesses here. There's the two sides of the business: the installation side, where we manufacture EPS insulation and supply all over Ireland and the UK, and then there's the retrofit side of things, where we deal with domestic, commercial, and community upgrades. So today's conversation is about the commercial. I suppose just another point: I'm a black belt in Six Sigma and Lean. And I suppose my take on retrofit is really lean for business, or lean for commercial operations. We're leaning out the energy, making the most of the energy we put in, removing any sort of waste of energy. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about the SEI commercial grant, what's involved, how you go about it, the steps, how long it takes, etc. And then we're going to talk about a few examples of the projects we completed here at Core, and I suppose some SE awards we're in for now as a result of them projects. So I'm not going to repeat what John says. We all know the reason why we're doing this and why the SE commercial grants out there. I suppose it's encouraging businesses and commercial operation to be more efficient. John talked about the targets and the bills coming, and we all know about our 2030 targets of reducing greenhouse gases by about 40%, and the 2050 targets after that. So what is a commercial grant by SEI? So it's part of the BEC scheme. So the BEC is Better Energy Communities, and there's three parts of that. It's a commercial part, a domestic part, and a community part. So Core Retrofit is a project coordinator for SEI. So we build in projects so we can take in a number of commercial operations or businesses looking to upgrade it. We can take in domestics, we can take in communities, and we can build projects anywhere from about 250,000 up to 5 million. So we can do small projects for small businesses or large projects for large businesses. We've been at this about 6 or 7 years now. Our project managers have extensive experience in this area. And so what does an SEI grant get you? So basically it gets you 30% back on the capital cost of installing a more efficient method of doing things. So it could be putting in PV with another thing. It could be upgrading the processes using less steam or less oil or less electricity. It could be putting in LED lightings in your office, in your yards, all over your manufacturing operations. Can be doing heating upgrades, ventilation, refrigeration, stuff like that. So why would we do it? So basically, I suppose there's three main reasons we do it, and how is it accepting it? It's the payback. These energy upgrades have typical savings on payback periods of anything from 6 or 7 up to 11 or 12 years. It gives our employees more healthy businesses. And John stated, if you have healthy business, you're going to have less absenteeism. People, I suppose, working better in a more efficient environment. So I kind of touched on it there. There's three main reasons we do it. You know, energy efficient savings, and payback is typically less than 15 years on the measures that are acceptable to the grant. Sometimes it can be longer, depending on the life frame of the asset. It's an opportunity to upgrade equipment that may be, 10, 20 years old, that may be inefficient, maybe better ways of doing things now. new motors with inverters that are going to use less energy, or smarter way of monitoring them motors compared to where it would be 10 years time. And it's to fight climate change. And I suppose that's very important going forward. As John pointed out, there's possibly going to be taxes coming on businesses in these areas that are not energy efficient. And also we're finding for tenders now, it's often a question on tenders, you know, have you any steps to go to carbon neutral, or your path on sustainability? This is becoming a very important factor, and in the years to come, it's going to become a lot more important. So I'm just going to explain the process. So the process is about 12 different steps. So basically, it starts off as the business has an idea, contact core. One of our project engineers will answer your call, we'll have a conversation to you, you send in the specs of the equipment. They'll do, I suppose, a first glance over to tell you whether the project is acceptable or not. They have experience in all the different areas, so they'll be able to tell you, you know, fairly quickly whether they think the project is a runner or not. If they give you the indication then that the project is a runner, we'll organise one of our an audit, basically an energy audit of the project. So what that does is an energy engineer will go in, he look at the project, he look at the existing specs, he look at where your energy bills, where the energy going, where is it being used. He look at the proposed specs, he do you know, a complete analysis of the proposed spec and come out with what the energy would be in then. If there's a payback in energy, then it will be taken forward and put into an SEI application. So I suppose the energy audit will give you the cost that's going to be incurred and the savings coming out of it. This will lead then to building the SEI application. So our project manager then will combine your project with a number of other projects, probably from the commercial field and the domestic field and the community field, and put it into what's called a project by SEI. So for this project, we'll complete a technical workbook. So the technical workbook explain all the aspects that's going to go into the project, where you're spending the money, what's going to be installed, what's going to be done, and it will also give the savings. Once that's submitted then to SEI, this typical has to be done usually, it's on an annual basis for building projects. Typically it has to be in by January. This year we see it opening in November, and we'll be submitting projects from November probably to the end of January. It's a first come, first served basis. There's a certain pot of money available to SEI. If the budget is gone and your project isn't in, unfortunately, it has to sit there to the following year. So once the project is submitted to SEI will do a quick check over to make sure they have all the required documentation, and then they will evaluate the project on a project by project basis with some of their experts in-house. They may come back with some questions to core. If there is, they'll be answered. And then they'll review the project, and if the project makes the savings and meets the requirements of the scheme, it will be accepted. So typically it takes about 2 to 3 months, depending on where you are in the queue. So typically around March we get approval for the projects. If the project is approved, then you're allowed to go and purchase the asset or the upgrade. So our project manager will usually communicate with your engineer and the customer and determine what's going into the project, when it starts, when it needs to be done, the paper documentation requirements to make the project successful. Once the work commences, then our project coordinator will go out and inspect the works on a number of times throughout the project to make sure it's been done as per the specs and as per the quality requirements associated with the project. When all the work is done, then our project coordinator will work with the contractor and the owner to get the certifications required. So typical certifications required will be the spec of the equipment, the CE mark of the equipment, commissioning certs, recce certs is required, and then proof of payments that the asset was purchased and all payments was paid to the contractor. So our project coordinator then will upload all this information to SEI. This typically has to be done by the closing date, usually the 15th of October each year. It will go back into SEI then, and they'll review all the documentation and see that it meets the requirement as laid out in the application, and with those then to make payment. So payment is the review process, or the payment process can take anything for probably 2 to 3 months afterwards. After it's uploaded, the SEI may inspect it to make sure that the works is completed as per the application, as per the uploaded documentation. So that they sample a number of projects each year. Having this scheme here that is 4 to 6 months for payment after thing, it depends where you are in the queue. You know, the sooner you get it done, the sooner you get payment back. So now I'm going to talk about a few sample projects we completed with Core over the years. This is in our manufacturing facility here in Cavan. So we started this journey, I suppose, 3 years ago, or sorry, about 4 to 5 years ago, and we've done projects every year to upgrade the energy use at our building. So the first one we done was in the office block. So the office block, we put in a heat pump. So basically, we replaced our old oil boiler and upgraded the office facility to run with a heat pump. You can see from the graph there that we're saving about 3,783 kilowatts per year, which equates to 680 euros per year. The second bigger project was we upgraded all the lights in the building from fluorescent lights or whatever they were to LED lighting. So this not only the office block and the hallways, we done the whole manufacturing area, the whole warehouse area, and all the outside lights. So this is a significant saving. As you see that you're saving the guts of $5,000 each year can be put to better work. The next bigger project we done then was our boiler upgrade. So the boiler we had here was about 15 years old, really inefficient, and we installed the U boiler. The U boiler was a 92.5% efficient boiler, and the savings out of this is astronomical. So the boiler, our process is used here steam, so our boiler is running almost 24/7 a day or per week. So you can see here huge savings in this, 19,000 per year. This project paid itself back in about 15 years. And from a business point of view, it was not only the energy efficient savings, but also the risk. The risk of having all your operations going through a 15-year-old asset is, is quite daunting. So it gave us great peace of mind to put in, a really, really high efficient boiler, use state-of-the-art technology on it that gave us controls, PM schedules, monitoring of steam, so we can see now if any inefficiencies is coming or something's going wrong downstream in our process where we may be using less steam than we would in a typical day. So we can get graphs and output out of that to keep us on track and keep us on the most energy efficient use of our steam. So this project, the next project here is a block mold. So about 75% of our EPS we manufacture here. Comes in as a resin. We expand it out to a bead form, and then we put the bead into this block mold, and we compress and we form it into a block. So this machine here is about 5 meters tall. It's about 1.5 in diameter or wide and 1 meter deep. It's heated by steam. So the previous mold we had here was about 20 years old. Very inefficient. So why was it inefficient? So I suppose it was inefficient for a number of reasons. One, the valves were old. The valves were probably wear, losing steam. The insulation, degraded over time. The motors was all old motors with no inverters on it. Now we have a slick piece of kit here with energy efficient motors with inverters, so we can ramp them up when we're starting. We have monitoring on the whole process. And the other big gain we got out of this process was we put in 2 massive heat exchangers on it. So any heat that's lost at the end of the cycle, we put through heat exchangers and we put back into our boiler to preheat the water in the boiler. So our projected savings on this was over 700,000, and we came out. We done our M&B in this. So we do an M&B when you complete a project. So about a year after the project is installed, you have to go back to verify that the savings you get is equal to what you submitted. So the savings on this is coming out at 45,000 per annum. So that's, from a business point of view, is massive. So that 45,000 per annum is energy savings only. What we're saving in buying less gas and less electricity to run this equipment. For ourselves as an operation, I suppose there was huge operational savings as well. We can make product now to the sizes the customer want because there's more controls. There's adjustment in it to do different block sizes. And I suppose the quality of the product we made is far superior than it was before, which goes back into another waste stream that are eliminated. It makes our work more efficient. It's the whole right first time principle. The next slide I have is a project we're ongoing at the moment. We're currently in this year's commercial application, and we're installing some other U process equipment. So we have a bead processing machine. The small picture on the top is the current equipment. That equipment as well there's 2 of them. They're about almost 20 years old. Same as the block mold, I suppose technology has moved on, and manufacturer of these equipment has got more smarter way of doing things since then. So we're installing this machine inside the next 3 weeks. It's arriving on site next week. It's built, it's about to go in, and will take us two weeks to install it. So again, this gives us huge energy savings. On the electrical side, more efficient motors. On the terminal side, this process uses steam again, so it's more efficient use of the steam, more parameters to control the steams, more, I suppose, slicker valves that let the steam in, better insulation on the equipment that we get more use of the steam, and a bigger chamber then, so that we're processing more product with the same amount of steam. This equipment here is going to give us similar savings to the other equipment, with savings of about 40,000 a year and a payback of 10 years. We have I have no picture of it here, but we have a second process we're upgrading as well. Is when we make them blocks of EPS, we cut them into various shapes and sizes for various customers, and we're upgrading, I suppose, 4 manual, semi-manual type machines into a fully automated equipment. So we're taking out four machines of about 28 kilowatts each and replacing them with one machine of about 35 kilowatt hours each. This again has given us huge electrical savings. It has the technology that motors and energy sources are only running when needed, not running when someone goes and turns them off. And again, that equipment has about 11-year payback from an energy point of view alone, not taking into account the operational savings, which is probably going to have that again. Okay, so I suppose just to give us a high level figure, so over the last 4 years or 5 years, we saved that amount of kilowatts, well over a gig. Annually, that's saving us 70,000 euro a year, which is quite substantial to any small to medium sized business to ourselves. So I suppose my question out here, why would you not go and do this? This is something you need to be doing. If you need to upgrade your processes, if you have old equipment, it's a phenomenal opportunity to get a grant like this, because these grants won't last forever. And just a quick note, we're up for the SEE awards this year in the SME category, and I suppose the project was submitted as a kind of is the path we've taken on our energy performance, and I suppose SEI has recognised this and put us in the finalists because we're doing incremental savings every year. Like everybody else, capital is tight, but we're trying to take an incremental step every year, both from efficiency point of view and from our own CSR. The business we're in of supplying insulation, we want to be seen as one of the leaders in promoting energy performances, both locally and nationally. I suppose the next step for us was we're starting on our ISO 50001 journey, which is getting the energy standard into the plant, and that's going to drive greater monitoring and greater success in this area, hopefully. So that's my slide done. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions for me, like all these presentations I tend to skip through them a little bit too fast. I'm going to put up my email. So if anyone has any questions afterwards, feel free to take down my email and phone number there and reach out to me, and I'll try my best to do whatever help or advice you need on a potential project or put you in contact with one of our project engineers here. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass you back to Lisa now. I think is going to chair the forum for some questions if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Porrick, and we introduce to Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks, Porrick, and thanks, John. I'll start with yourself, John. A few questions for you. So first off, what key action in the Climate Action Plan is the most enticing to businesses in your opinion, and how it will help us reach our targets?
Well, I suppose they all might come together, but one of the things that came up in the Climate Action Plan, which I think almost we need to make sure it probably doesn't come through, is there's an idea that we're moving away from shallow retrofits, and that all of the funding is going to be on just deep retrofits. But I think, like as you're saying, Porrick, like that, having that stepped approach to, okay, this year we can look at our lighting, next year we can look at the motors, and or we can, I suppose 2 years down the line, we can have that stepped approach to upgrading the entire building. So it's definitely something that is in there that they're going to look at removing the shallow retrofits, and that would be something I think should definitely not be encouraged to be removed from the funding mechanisms. I think it's key to have, no matter what level of it, like as you're saying, capital is tight, and there's loads of different projects that companies could be looking at. If they can just have one shallow retrofit and look at another one in 2 years, or kind of have a good experience with that, I think it's critical to keep that. So I'm not going to pick one action that's key, but sort of just to keep an eye on that action that might remove the shallow retrofits from it, because I think it's key.
Thanks, John. And I think as well, one step further is a step more than what we've had in the past. So every company that does it a small bit at a time, we're striving towards our goals. As you mentioned, the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is currently in proposal stage, and it should be implemented by January 1st, 2024. How beneficial do you feel this will be for Ireland and the built environment?
I just think it'll kind of just bring it all into, it'll have a framework for reporting on this. So we're kind of like all of the ESG, like it's all becoming, people are thinking about it and discussing it in companies, and they're going, okay, we have to think about ESG now, which is all great. But I think there's a worry that different companies have different understandings of what it is, whereas this might bring a bit of framework and commonality across it with this proposal. So we're all just having, I suppose, the same benchmarks and looking at improving things at a kind of a, I suppose, a national level.
And as Porg said as well, it can be a differentiating factor regarding your competition as well, but also it's something that we should all be doing, is increasing our sustainability. And I think you're...
Yeah.
Oh, go on ahead.
Sorry, I just think it's like it's having that common, like you're saying that you're doing really well on your ESG. How do you actually compare it to the other person who's also saying we're doing really well on our ESG, and they're just using different benchmarks to sort of what's good and what's bad. Whereas hopefully this will provide a kind of a robust enough benchmarking system that you can see, well, actually, look, Core are the ones who are doing better than their competitors. So maybe we'll definitely pick Core if the cost is equal. But there might even be a case that, well, actually, our our CSR reporting will actually allow us to pay a little bit more to Core because they're actually doing more on their CSR, and it's all, I suppose, interlinked, that good companies are rewarding other good companies, and it's kind of it's more than just saying you're doing something. It's having the figures that, like Porrick has demonstrated there with your reductions.
And I know one of the stats from the World Green Building Council was over 90% of people are more likely to go for a company that makes an impact in the world, which will be a massive thing, will be sustainability. So I think that's another thing regarding customers and sales as well. And just when we're looking at our work environment right now, obviously things have changed with COVID, working from home, hybrid working and so on. How do you feel businesses can take advantage of maximising their energy efficiency? As you mentioned, with weekends, offices may be closed, but now they may only be open 2 days a week for employees to be there. And this can also be incorporated into their corporate social responsibility for their employees, but also for the environment.
Well, I definitely think that there'll be no two companies having similar approaches, but it will come down to having control over, I suppose, a certain amount of automatic control or kind of remote access to heating, to cooling within buildings, that and temperature control, that you could have, I suppose, reduced capacity in offices and that you can just control that, and that there is somebody who's responsible for that. But maybe just people have to be more knowledgeable that they have to turn off the heating if they're the only one in the office, or as they're leaving at 2 in the afternoon and there's nobody left in the office, that actually, wait, I'll turn off the lights, but I'll also turn off the heating. And it's something that it's almost just on their laptop. Or else, I suppose, moving to another level where there's a building management system where it senses that nobody's there, so we can ramp down the heating or the cooling or whatever the energy requirement is in that building. So I think it's going to be controls.
And I think a lot of what you were saying as well is regarding education and resources available, a lot of training. I know the IGBC offer a wide variety of training courses, and SAI as well. So I think slowly, if we bring our employees into it and increase awareness, and we all are on the same page, and like you said, not just greenwashing it, but creating a sustainable environment within our workplace.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, John. Porg, what would you say is the typical timeline for commercial retrofit? So for core, what was the timeline? Was it a few months, or how would it be when people start their initial inquiry?
Yeah, so I suppose typically, Lisa, the inquiries start around now, and the application process from SEI usually opens around the 1st of November. So it's usually open from the 1st of November to the end of January. Now, there's a caveat in that the SEI only have so much budget. So if the budget runs out, it could close, the 15th of January, the 1st of January, depending on demand. I suppose the year, quite luckily, there seems to be a lot of demand for it. And I think SEI have done a great job in getting the word out that these grants are available. So if you get your application in, let's say sometime in November, December, SEI review it. They review it on a first come, first served basis. So you'll typically have your approval back around March, and works can start, and the money can be spent on whatever asset you're investing it in. So then it depends, I suppose, on the project you're doing, how long it will take. It could be a simple project like a lighting upgrade or an EV charger, which can happen relatively quickly, or a longer project like some of the stuff we were doing. We're tight on timeline to get it finished, but generally the finish typically around August, September. You get all your information uploaded. It has to be uploaded by the 15th of October, and then it's into the review process of SEI, and that takes 2 to 3 months before you get payment back. So payment comes back sometime probably in January, and it takes us then a couple of weeks at Core Retrofit just to align the payments back out to the individual customers.
Great, thanks, Borg. And as you've mentioned in your presentation, there are many financial benefits for upgrading the commercial property, and also the energy savings, which will in turn help the environment, and renewable energy is eliminating the use of fossil fuels.
Yes.
What other benefits have you seen regarding your employees' health and well-being?
I suppose a couple of, just the quality of the heating system now that we have in the office. It's well balanced in each office. You're not going into one office and it's open. You're not going into one side of the office and someone's opening the window and then they're shutting on the other side. Typically what happens in it. So, more well balanced heating system. Out on the factory floor, our lighting has drastically improved. Our I suppose manufacturing facility developed and expanded over the last 20 years. So some of the lighting would have been poor. So now we have a good quality of lighting for all the operators doing the work. And the second thing then is as I said, on that last block mold project we have heat exchangers in it, and one of the heat exchangers we have in there is blowing hot air into one of our storage sheds. So we're getting like free heating in that area of the building. So it's just the quality of the environment has improved.
That's great. Thanks, Borg. And finally, you were just mentioned there that in the next coming weeks, we're getting a new bead processor and cutting line. Do you have any future upgrades planned post 2022?
I suppose our next ones we're looking at is our electricity. We have a phase lag in our electricity. So basically our electricity supply is coming in. We're not getting the full output of it. So we're working at putting in piece of kit on that to rectify it, that we get the full power out of our electricity. Second thing, we have some motors then that we can upgrade to more efficiency by putting on inverters and some large motors. So that sort of stuff.
So you're striving towards carbon neutral now, hopefully before 2050 anyway.
That's in our corporate strategy, and that's one of our goals and one of our missions. So we're, as John said, we're trying to make incremental steps on that path.
Thanks. And if anyone else has any questions, this video will be up on our LinkedIn and our Facebook page, and you can check out Core Retrofit's website or IGBC. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you everyone who was able to join us live today, and thank you to John, Parik, and Lisa for joining us today as well. If you'd like to know more about commercial retrofit, you can visit our website or our social media. As Lisa said before, we are recording this video, so you can have a look at this last slide with all our social media and also our email address and our website. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a good day. Thank you.
See you, John.